Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for listening in today. My name is Ari Zuckerman, Vice President at the Centercourt Sports Academy. For all the new listeners, our goal for the Centercourt webinar series is to keep valuable information flowing to the international and to the local tennis and sports community, as well as keeping everybody engaged with creative ideas throughout these tough times. Part of this goal includes our new brand, our new and exciting Centercourt 360 program, which is a holistic approach to developing the whole student. These programs provide skill sets to learn, hone, challenge, enrich, and fortify the student's resiliency, accountability, and self-driven performance. We have a weekly host of speakers, which I will throw into the chat in a minute or so. Today's main topic will be college recruiting and college tennis. Our very special guests today are Damian Hume, who coaches at Princeton University, as well as Scott Veith, head coach of men's and women's tennis at Drew University. Joining us, as well as my regular guests, legendary coach Conrad Singh. Conrad's title is the COO, Director of Coaching and Head of Performance at the Centercourt Sports Academy. Again, thanks to everybody for listening. With that, I'm going to throw it over to Conrad to start engaging in hopefully with a very valuable conversation with everyone.
Well, first and foremost, thanks a lot, guys, for making the time to be with us. You guys have always been absolutely terrific with regards to helping us out at Centercourt Sports Academy. I wanted to get straight into it, if I might. And I'd like to ask, I mean, it's very interesting that the role of college coaches and being in the roles that you're in. I always wonder, how do you find yourself in that role? I mean, what has brought you to this point?
I'll go first. I'm Scott Veith. I think I started in college tennis about 20 years ago, and I found my way into tennis through other sports. I was coaching college football to start, and I was at Fairleigh Dickinson in Madison, another Division III school, and there was a need for a tennis coach right around the same time where I had a need for money. So I talked to the boss, the AD, and I said I was willing to learn, and he kind of let me learn on the job. And I was, if you would have told me when I was 18 years old that I'd be coaching college tennis, I would have laughed at you. But I fell in love with it, fell in love with the game. Position. And I love it. It's coaching college. I don't really consider myself an instructor coaching. I coach a group of people that work together, and that's where we are right. A little different now with this situation, but that's me, and that's where I'm at Drew.
Fantastic. Damian?
Yep, I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. I actually played ITFs and futures all over, and then I actually started in junior college down in Dallas, Texas, and then played at Boise State for a couple of years, and then started my coaching career at Michigan State in 2014. Started coaching, and then I've been at Princeton. This is going on to my 5th year.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. And guys, I wanted to just right from the onset, if I might, we'll start with you, Scott, if we could. If you could let us know, obviously we've got different divisions, Division 1, 2, 3, and various different aspects to college tennis. Could you maybe give us an insight as to the differences between the divisions at Division 2 and 3? And once you're done, I might ask Damon if you could do the same for us at the Ivy League in Division 1.
Sure. So, the coach the whole time I've been doing this. The biggest thing about Division 3 is they cannot offer you money specifically based on your athletic. Have a conversation with you of who to talk to. It doesn't mean that you won't get any scholarship. Almost all of my players receive some sort of scholarship money, whether it's university-based aid or independent scholarships. But that's the biggest thing about Division III, is that there are no athletic scholarships specifically. Then you go up to the Division II level, they have a little bit more freedom within those programs and within the athletic departments to say what percentage goes to what player. They usually have a budget within their department. That is primarily the biggest difference. And I would say one of the biggest misconceptions is people assume the Division III school will be the most expensive without looking at their university aid or their grants or their any other type of financial. As far as it comes to play levels, they can be very similar. Damian has a little bit more insight on the higher levels, but that's basically the lower levels of college tennis. That's where you're looking.
Okay, and Damian, if you could tell us the difference between Ivy and scholarship D1 schools.
Yeah, if everybody knows that in Division One men's tennis, a fully funded program, which not all schools are fully funded, the men's side has 4.5 scholarships that they get to divvy out between some of the players. At the Ivy League schools, they do not offer scholarships, but financial aid. So you would actually send in tax returns. Your parents would send in tax returns, and they would base that, they call it need-based, and they would base your finances based on how much money you would get. Some people would get a lot, some people would get a little bit, and we would not be limited to the 4.5 scholarships as a lot of Division One schools. But then other Division One schools would have 4.5 scholarships and have to basically stay within those parameters with their team. Yeah.
Very interesting. I want to, obviously we're in a very unique time, and all of our speakers so far, we've been asking the similar question. This is COVID-19 and being here, and obviously we're in our 7th week here in New Jersey, pretty much of the lockdown. How has it affected you guys? What have you had to do with your players? And all the rest.
So, one of the biggest challenges we've all had, and we talked a little bit about before we went live, is the answer to the question of when, and the answer we have to give every day is I don't know. We don't know when we can be back on the courts. We don't know when we're going to be allowed back on campus. But the what hasn't changed. We're still trying to win landmark conference championships. We're still trying to bring in the best college tennis players we can. We're still trying to put out the best environment we could possibly put out. So the communication has been unique. For us, it's been a lot of group chat. And a lot of that is just joking around with the players, just some occasional check-ins and letting them do their own things too. But it has definitely been unique as far as how we've been communicating over these past 7 weeks.
Damian?
Yeah, I think we're so fortunate these days that we have technology. If I think about 10 years ago, video chatting wasn't that big of a deal, or it was very hard. Even the internet was hard to access video chats, and people across the world. Like now we have Zoom. It's incredible. We've been fortunate that we've had Zoom, and we get to Zoom call with our team. I think the biggest thing is we're trying to communicate with our players and just trying to stay in touch, not just kind of ghost them and leave them out there. But like a couple of my guys, I do fitness challenges with them. I love that, and it's kind of keeping us motivated, just keeping us engaged. I think it's anything that you can do to stay engaged, anything that you can do with your players, just to talk to them, joke around, like Scott mentioned, just talk to them and just kind of hang out and just be like, it's such a tough time for people. People are alone, they isolated, and crazy things could happen. And you want to make sure that, hey, we're still here, we still care about you, and anything that you guys need. So we talk to our guys a lot. We've had people come in and talk to our guys, and so that's our biggest thing, is just communicate and talk to them and doing that, because sometimes it can be very easy just to not do anything and just sit around.
Yeah, that's very true. We're doing the same at Centercourt. We're really trying to keep our players engaged and give them other learning opportunities. We've obviously been very fortunate. We've had Craig O'Shaughnessy and Dr. Mark Kovacs and Emma Doyle and Gigi Fernandez and some really big names, Dr. Anthony Ross, all really pushing the being a student athlete and doing all the 1%ers and all of the things that you don't normally do, taking the value out of the ball striking a little bit more and focusing in those other areas that you can work on. Is there anything that you're doing with regards to that, Damian? You mentioned the fitness side. Is there any sort of statistical stuff? Do the players get videos of themselves or anything like that? Are they able to actually go back and analyze their own images or matches through what you guys offer?
Yeah, so they can actually go back and look. We have PlaySite on our courts. If they wanted to, they can go back and look at that. We have match reports that we actually work with Craig, that he kind of does that. So guys go back and look at that. They, if they're able to hit or anything like that, they send us videos and just like, oh, what do you think? And kind of doing those kind of things. So it's just continuing the conversation with what you're doing with fitness. I'm a huge proponent of just getting uncomfortable, doing something that's not that easy, that it can push you just a little bit. So whatever that means, it could be, 100 pull-ups, go do 100 pull-ups today, see if you can go do it. So it's just kind of whatever that means, is getting you out of your comfort zone. I was pushing, like I still do fitness challenges, and I was doing a mile run and trying to see how quickly I could run a mile. And it wasn't to compete against anybody, it was kind of compete against myself. But I was talking to people about that to keep myself accountable doing that. So we're trying to get our guys to do that same thing.
Fantastic. Scott?
Yeah, I think Damian made a good point about just the general idea of fitness. In addition to coaching men's and women's tennis at Drew, I have the unique dual title of also being the head strength conditioning coach. You're not going to find a whole lot of people that split those two roles, but that's what they asked me to do, so that's what I do. So what we did for our student athletes at Drew is we kind of gave them a general guideline of these are the things you should be doing every day. You're getting in your 10,000 steps, eating to gain lean muscle mass, sleeping 8 hours a day, that kind of stuff. Down to this happens 5 days a week, this happens 3 days a week, and then this happens 1 day a week. And that 1 day a week is the stuff like Damian was talking about, that super physical challenge, whether set a new 5K time or whatever it is. It could be, like you said, 100 pull-ups, whatever it is. But we've kind of tried to compartmentalize it for our players that way. And this is every day, this is 5 days, this is 3, and this is 1. And, that'll go for the next 2 weeks until we give them a new cycle. But I think it's helped our players in all sports just kind of grasp the idea of, okay, not everything's normal, but this part can be.
That's fantastic. And we're doing similar stuff. We've had a 21-day, was it a video challenge? We've had a 28-day mental challenge. We've had a 14-day footwork challenge. So, it's great to see that everyone's getting innovative. And what I love most is the industry, you guys, us, everyone, we're all pulling together. We're all trying to sort of help each other out. And I think the players, the key is right now to just be busy and be productive and keep challenging themselves. And the stuff that you guys said right there, it's very simple. You don't need any, major equipment to do any of those sorts of things, but just to be, diligent about it and maintain a schedule and every day go out and just keep pushing yourself. So great to hear that we're also on track with what we're doing. A question I wanted to ask you guys, and probably more to do with the long-term effects of this coronavirus. Is there anything that you guys can kind of see with regards to either the division, the school, or the programs that you're involved with, or with players and that type of thing? Is there anything that parents that should be really thinking about if their kids are looking to get to college soon? Scott?
So, well, one thing we've definitely noticed on our end is that, the NCAA granted an additional year of eligibility for spring athletes from this year across the board. We've had quite a few take advantage of that. So we'll have a lot of our players returning we didn't expect to return. So that's one minor thing, is that a lot of players get another year of eligibility. As far as what they should be doing, especially from a recruiting standpoint, one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give now and every other time is take the bull by the horns. Call me. Email me if you're interested in Drew or whatever school you're interested in. Reach out and start the contact now. You'll get an answer. You may not get the answer you want, but you'll get an answer, and you'll know what direction you can go from there. So that right now is a great time where just about every coach is available, at the very least, to return your email. So that would be my top piece of advice: is reach out to the coach.
That's great, Damian.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing we tell people is always make sure you do your homework. Know what the NCAA rules are, like in terms of if you're a sophomore. June 15th is a big date for sophomores coming up, because that's the first time we can contact players, so knowing that coming forward, knowing what schools that you're looking for, what are you looking into, go look up, UTRs, tennis recruiting, those kind of things. You can go and look up each school, and you can go look up the UTRs. You can say, oh, I'm a 10 UTR, and go look, and now go compare it to, Michigan, USC, South Carolina, Drew, Division III schools, Division II. You can go look up all of that. And I think the one thing that's hard, we get a lot of emails, but a lot of people are just like, they just kind of throw the email out because we, high academics and people, and it's like, okay, it's great, but do you know anything about us? Do you know anything about our team? Do you know anything about Division I? Do you know anything? So people just kind of throw email, and I think it's great. But I think also people also got to understand, if you are going to Michigan, for instance, University of Michigan, it's a pretty academic school. Do you want academics? Do you want to be in Michigan? It's pretty cold there. Those kind of things. And start to come up with a list. Again, the list is going to change all the time. Schools are going to be added on. Schools are going to be taken off. Coach might contact you. All of a sudden it gets put on. Coach might not contact you, but you could contact the coach. Those kind of things. Constantly doing your homework. Once you get that out, again, all the emails are on the website, and you can go and contact those coaches. Once the big thing is, hey, what is your criteria? What are you looking for? And then seeing if it matches with the other coach, and then going from there. I think the biggest thing, those are the first like metrics that you can measure. Obviously, there's a lot of metrics that you can't measure that coaches look for, but those are some of the metrics that you can really like, oh, okay, I can hit these metrics. And that's step one of like 10.
That's terrific information. I'm going to come back and ask you guys a question a little bit more about that in a second. Is there any sort of long-term issues, or I've been reading some sports programs have been sort of looking like they might be getting the chop, especially tennis. Is there anything you guys could let us know about that, being, you know, that you guys are in the industry with regards to the college athletes?
Yeah, I mean, you see it every once in a while, and it's happened a few times in the past few weeks where a school decides to drop tennis. I don't think you have to worry about that in either of our cases. We're both, both schools that are very, we both had tennis forever and real nice facilities. But yeah, it's going to happen. It happens. Places decide to drop sports, usually not for the best reasons, but that's out of our control. But I would not say that that's an indicator in any way that college tennis is dying. I mean, there are more teams now in college tennis than there were 20 years ago. That's a fact. I don't know if there are more next year than the past year, but I wouldn't worry about a one-year swing. New Jersey City University just added tennis. I think they start competition next year. So there are schools going the other way as well. So it ebbs and flows, who offers what sports. But there's plenty of college tennis teams out there, and I don't think you need to worry about either of the schools on your TV screen right now. The tennis has been huge at both places for a long time.
That's great to hear. What about yourself, Damian? Is there anything sort of on the inner sanctum that we could sort of, learn a little bit more about the effects of Corona?
Yeah, I think there's still a bunch up in the air with what's going on. I think what's happening, the first thing that ADs are doing is they're starting to cut budgets a little bit and trying to save money. They're looking to go into regional play in the fall. So they're looking to come up with a couple different ideas. Again, nothing set in stone, but a couple of ideas just to start to save money. I think that's the first thing. They're trying to save money so they don't have to cut the programs. So I think the ADs, coaches, presidents are looking at how do we save money and how do we keep these tennis programs? I think that's the number one goal. The RTA president, Tim Russell, has been awesome with that. He's on the forefront with the RTA board, and they are, they're pushing at to ADs and presidents how to keep trying to save these sports and how to save tennis, because tennis is such a great sport and a lot of people are playing it. And I think people are, I think the sport is growing a lot, and especially a lot of internationals are coming over. So I think we're trying to save that and preserve that, because like I was mentioning earlier, the NCAA denied one of the group of 5 bills that they try to pass, trying to cut the sports from 16 teams to 12 teams to qualify to be a Division I school. And they denied that. So that's a great thing. It's, it's one win for tennis. But there's a lot of coaches all around that we talk to that are, taking a pay cut or taking a budget cut for something. But I think it's okay. I think it's something that we can start to focus on in the future. How can we keep saving money? How can we stay relevant?
If I can jump in for a second, how is your from a coach, is your recruiting process pretty much the same as normal? Are you business as usual? Being that you obviously hope to have tennis in the fall.
For me, it's not, and the reason is because I would spend a lot of time going to watch people play, and they're not playing right now. So what has happened a lot more on the recruiting aspect for us is more conversations. Controlling what we can control, and that's always kind of my mantra in work in general is control what you can control. But that's kind of been what's different. What I've found is at our level, at the Division III level, we have a lot of current seniors who have just stalled and are frozen in the process because they don't know what to expect in the fall. And they're right, we don't know what to expect in the fall. But I would say that's not a good reason to not attempt to set yourself up for when this is all said and done and you're ready to go back to school. So continue the process. For some kids, it might mean a gap year. For some kids, it might mean a year at a community college or a part-time year, or depending on their level and their situation. Or it could mean you sign up and you're ready to rock and roll in the fall, and you ride this out for when it gets back to normal. But yeah, I've seen quite a few people who have just stalled, and I don't know if that's a great tactic. I would still continue to communicate if I were them.
That's great information. I wanted to focus a little bit, if I could, or ask you guys a little bit, the difference between D1, D3. Firstly, it's a multifaceted question. Firstly, how do the schools gain that status? And I mean, there's a bit of a misconception out there that the status and division that they're playing could equate to the academic division. Please let us know a little bit about that. The other thing I wanted to ask you was just a general day in the life of a student who's at a D1 or an Ivy League school versus a D3 school. Scott?
So as far as Division 1 versus 2 versus 3 versus NAIA, it's choice. Your university gets to choose. In 1980, it used to be the college division and the university, or the small school and the large school divisions. At that point, around 1980, they made people choose how they were going to identify as university Division 1, Division 2, or Division 3, and usually it had to do with who you wanted to play against. Now, at that time, the Ivy League was already very well established, so theirs hasn't really changed a whole lot. But at the smaller school level, a lot of places just kind of said, hey, we want to play these schools that we always play. They're forming a league, or they're deciding to go Division 3. Maybe we should too. So it was really just universities at that time. Now, some schools since then have changed, but there is no truth to any rumor that the best schools academically are Division and the worst are Division 3, or vice versa. If you look in the U.S. News and World Report, the top 50 schools in the all 3 divisions are represented in that top 50. So that's a little bit about the difference between the divisions and how that came about. And there's way more information out there than I gave you. But yeah, it's who you choose to affiliate with, basically.
Great answer. Damian?
Yeah, I think also people see it as a league, like, oh, you go Division 1 and you get relegated to go Division 2 to go Division 3. Like, people just have that misconception. It's not like that at all. Yeah, there's such good, especially when I've moved to this area in the Northeast, there's so many good Division 3 schools. And on top of that, a lot of them are really good tennis players. I think maybe the depth might be a little different. Division 1 might have a little bit more depth, but strength of players, there's so many really good players that I've seen come through this area and are playing Division 3 that could easily play at a high Division 1 school. So I think that's the one misconception that people have is, it's like you got to find the fit for you. Division 3 have very good academics, very, very good academics, and we know that, and that's a great place to go to. And then you just got to know what's going to be your fit. We talked about scholarship versus non-scholarship. I think that's where you start to find your fit, in terms of school-wise.
That's great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Any transfer issues then? Because if Division 3 tennis players are super strong, do they ever think of transferring to other schools or vice versa? Is that really an issue at either of your schools, or do most of your players stay? Or they stay here?
So, kids transfer from time to time. It happens. Right. I see on my end, and maybe it's because of who I deal with more often, but I see more Division 1 transfers coming from Division 1. Not to say that happens statistically more than anywhere else. I don't know. And then you just see the interdivision transfers, where people will go from one Division 2 school to another Division 2 school. Yeah, transferring happens, but like Damian said, it's probably they're probably just looking to find a better fit for themselves, and I hope that's why they're transferring, to find a better home for themselves as a student athlete.
Damian, do you see much transferring going on at the Ivies?
Yeah, we can't take transfers, so that's not even really a conversation that we can have with people. I mean, they kind of talking about it, but it's not really a conversation that we have with people a lot. I think even in Division 1, it doesn't happen that often in tennis. It's not like college football, basketball. It does not happen very often. It's happening a little bit now just because of the extra year of eligibility. That's a completely different story, but you do not see, if you see somebody transfer from even a Division 1 school to another Division 1 school in a normal year, it's not very common. It just doesn't happen that often. It does happen, but it's not as likely. Usually it's a few things that happen, it could be something happened in the family, they want to be closer to home, things like that.
I was recently chatting to some parents, and a couple of these parents had kids who were very good players, very, very good players. And the students are looking at potentially something like medicine or law, which obviously academically are very, very difficult things to undertake. What would your recommendation be with students who are seeking that type of career? Would it be to go to a D1 school? Would it be more to go towards a D2, D3 school? Because, we know the day in the life of the athlete can be different at the different schools. So could you also speak to that extreme on how does a day in the life of a D1 versus a D3 athlete look?
So my advice to the family in that situation, and that happens every year. I mean, I would say the majority of players that I deal with are either looking at something in the medical field or some they want to be an educator of some sort. I mean, they're intelligent people almost always, and they want to achieve career-wise. My question would be, I guess my answer to your question would be, I don't think it's about division. I think it's about program. I think it's what kind of flexibility does your program have? Do they practice at the same time every day? Is it flexible with medical rotations, flexible with teaching, or is it not? And it's different at each school. So talk to the coach if they. And I would also say, what have recent alums, and they've got 10 doctors in their past. It's possible to be a doctor there, but if they have none. And they don't have any current, biomedical majors or nobody's in neuroscience, it's probably a little bit more difficult to do it through that path. So that would be how I would look at it. And you talk about the day in the life. We have mandatory practice times and mandatory meeting times, but how I always say it is I am overly flexible with good, honest, hardworking people who are there to help Drew win, and I am not at all flexible with selfish jerks. That's kind of how I do it.
Love it. Damian?
Yeah, I think it's going to be based on school. I mean, in terms of with us, you come into undergrad. If you're going into medicine, you're going into law, that's going to be graduate school. What is going to be your path? So it's taking it like, for us, it's, okay, you're going to hit your undergrad. Like we had a guy at Boise State when I was playing there, studied chemistry at Boise State, and now he went to Colorado, went to medical school there, and now he's at one of the top pediatric hospitals in the country in Wisconsin. So I think it all just depends. You just got to have a clear path. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do next. I think the biggest thing is wherever you go, obviously you have to do well academically and then get into medical school, because that's going to be the next big step is getting into medical school next, or law school, and going from there. Is it going to set you up to go onto that next level?
That's very interesting. And I've also got a player who just recently finished undergrad and has moved back to her home country to study medicine. So that's very, very true. I wanted to also ask you guys, in terms of being an athlete or an aspiring student athlete, what are the percentages like of other people who are at the same campus that are student athletes? I'm sure it differs between schools, but could you comment a little bit towards that?
Yeah, so at Drew, we're a relatively small school. I guess relatively is not the case, but we're a small school. It's about a third of the kids on campus are involved in athletics at Drew, which in three. But that's about what we are. About 1/3 of the people are involved in athletics at Drew.
Damian, you guys?
Yeah, I think for us it's 1 in 5 is a student athlete. But, each school is going to be a little bit different. I think it depends how big the school is. You go to a big state school, and it's going to be a little bit more, a lot more students than student athletes. And the percentage is going to be a lot lower than that. But I think it all just depends how big the school is where you go. You go to like somewhere like Minnesota, they've got 65,000 undergrad. There's probably not going to be that many student athletes compared to the total population. But you go into other big schools also, they have football, they have basketball. So usually, like when I was at Boise State, I mean, it wasn't 1 in 5 those student athletes, but we kind of hung out together a lot. And so we knew a lot of student athletes. So we saw a lot of them. We hung out with a lot of student athletes when we were on campus. So you kind of find your little niche when you also get in there. And I think when you go to certain schools that you find almost these pockets of friends that you start to pick out. It could be the same degree, it could be student athletes, it could be people the same year as you. So
what are your thoughts on, any parents who I guess are listening in, or kids who are starting to think about getting to college? What are your sort of three nuggets of gold that you would tell every kid that wants to get to college, whether it be your college or another, that they really need, or that you look for? What are the three kind of things that they should be trying to develop?
For me, the biggest thing, if as far as development goes, I want them to be people who are athletes, not people who play tennis. I want it to be part of who you are as a person. Because anybody can play a sport. Anybody can go pick up a basketball and shoot. It doesn't make you a basketball player. Anybody can hit the ball against the wall 2 or 3 times a week. That doesn't make you a tennis player. If you don't, eat, sleep, and breathe sports, and it's not who you are as a person, college athletics is going to be unique for you. It might not be a good fit. Obviously, academics is huge. I mean, that's when none of us will be professional tennis players for a very long time. Nobody is, and, if you're playing college tennis, your chances of being a professional tennis player for even anything more than a few seasons are pretty limited. So take care of that. And then the third thing I would say is, let's not worry too much about the name of the school or what cachet it brings. Let's see if you can find the school that is right for you, where you want to be, where you want to live, and what degree you want to hang on your wall. Those are important things. That's for me.
Great nuggets. What about yourself, Damian?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Actually, like when I went through recruiting from junior college to Division I got recruited by some schools, and my visits were, I went to Georgia, Alabama, UCLA, and Texas, and I was kind of picking the 5th school, and Boise State was the other one. And I was talking to my coach overseas in South Africa, and he says, "Where are you going to be happy?" That's basically what he said to me. Are you going to be happy there? And he kind of went through it. And obviously, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of things that, you want to take into account. And I think that's one. Are you going to be happy there? Number one. And that's going to be with the coaches, the player going to be happy with us, because even if they're number 1 in the country and they're not going to be happy, they're not going to do well. They're not going to enjoy it. I think that's the one thing. We look at attitude, pretty hard. We go into the court. I mean, there's so many times where we've marked, we have a list of players, and, we're looking at high level and high academic players, and you have a bad attitude, swearing, all this kind of things. Obviously that can happen. People get mad on the court, but we start to see that as a constant sign that this is what this person's about. Well, they're straight off the list. I mean, I think it doesn't matter. We don't even matter, it doesn't matter what their ranking is or anything. That's one of the things that, we talk about things that you can't really measure in terms of UTR. And so there's these other things that we talk about. Attitude is a huge thing for us. Attitude, are they going to be happy? What is are they hardworking? We also look at it, another thing we look at is ceiling. How good are they going to be from here on out? How good can we make them? That's the other thing. Another coach could bring out the best in that play, and we can't do that. So those are the things that we kind of look at. Those are just, obviously very, very few things. There's a lot more to that, but those are some of the things that we start to look at.
Yeah, great answers. I mean, if you're a kid who's listening in right now, or you're a parent and, you've got a child that's aspiring to be a tennis player, take those messages. They were really, really good messages. I mean, how often do you see juniors, you guys, would see this or even remember from your own playing days, who could play so well, but their attitude was just something as a kid, that's not right. You may not be able to finger it and say that's the reason why you're struggling, but that's going to be their limiting factor at some point. And addressing that, it was also something that Dr. Anthony Ross spoke to in our earlier webinar about, being in control of your own thought process, and, committing to helpful actions and committing to helpful thoughts and all those sorts of things. They're things people can train now. So I really do hope any of the kids and parents listening in really pay attention to those feedbacks. One more I've got for you before we throw to Ari to pull some questions out of the chat. Are there any sort of common pitfalls that you might see, for whether it be a high school kid that's close to college, or someone that comes into college and maybe gets overwhelmed with this environment, or I'm not too sure exactly what you've seen, but I've certainly in my time I can think of many players that we had, especially over in Australia, who, you know, they were very good players in really, really quality and had never been to maybe these big cities where, you know, sports stars and all the rest. And they fell away very quickly. It took a year or a year and a half for them to be back home, out of the program, and you know, they weren't tennis players anymore. So is there any sort of pitfalls that you guys could recommend that the players keep their eyes open to, or any sort of advice you can give to that nature?
Yeah, you know, one of the first things I'll tell a recruit is find a loss. I want you to come to college having lost recently, because so many kids who play a weak tennis schedule, or they only play a mid-level high school schedule and they're by far the best player, and they come to college and they're the 7th best player on their own team, that kid is often disillusioned and thinks there's something they're not. So, you know, embrace losing, figure out why you're losing. It's okay to lose. It's not okay to not challenge yourself. They won't succeed in any program if they don't challenge themselves. So that, you know, one of the big things is I want you to find losses. I want you to play against players who are better than you, and you're more likely to be realistic about college tennis. And then number 2, one of the things I see all the time is tell the truth. If you do not love tennis, that's okay. If you just like to play occasionally, there's a college program for you where you can be successful, and the coach is okay with you showing up to practice 4 days a week. That program exists. They're out there. And if you're not that talented and you are addicted to tennis, tell coaches that. Be honest, because it's where you're going to live for the next 4 or 5 years. So, you know, number 1 is find losses and improve from them. And number 2, for me, is tell the truth. Be honest, and we will see if it's the right place for you.
That's great. Damian?
Yeah, I think communication is key. Communication with, could be academic advisors, it could be people on the team, it could be coaches. I think that's the biggest thing. Us not knowing about things that are going, that, you know, troubles that could be going on in a kid's life, we constantly asking them. We ask them, hey, how's it going? How are things going on with you? Because that's huge. They're not just a tennis player. I think that's the biggest thing that we as coaches try to communicate to the players and the parents. It's like we're trying to build them up as a person, number 1. They're going to be a tennis player, but the thing is we're trying to influence their lives for the rest of their life. We're trying to build, like, you know, for us it's men, you know, and then on the women's side it will be women, and we're trying to build them up as a person, you know, first and foremost. We're not just, okay, we're trying to teach a tennis player, because then we just absolutely lose everything else to the wayside, you know, everything that they care about and things like that. And I think that's huge. Also, I think people, when they don't have fun at a school, it's usually in the recruiting process, they get fixated on a school. They could say, you know what, no matter what, for me, it was, I wanted to be in a warm place. I could care less. I just want to be in a warm place. But that might not be good for me. Maybe that's not the right thing for me. Keeping an open mind. I went to Boise State, a place that snows, and I've never seen snow before. You know, and we thrived and succeeded, and I did well there, and it was awesome. And I got, you know, I did pretty well in college, and I was like, okay, and I kept an open mind. But I communicated with other people, and I listened to them instead of me saying, no, this is where I'm going, no matter what. And let's say, you know, be careful what you wish for sometimes on top of that.
That's so interesting. I mean, what you just said, and especially Coach Scott, I wanted to ask, how important is it in the team where you've got varying ages, guys from all over the place, different cultures, families, rules, whatever? How important is the give back factor within the team? Because we often in an academy will have, you know, kids who are good or you know, they're at the upper end, and they just want to be in that top group. They only want to be classed with these 2-3 other kids. They'll only go to practice if those couple of kids are there. You know, we're often saying, listen, warm up with this guy, big brother mentality. Help out this little kid. This little guy's only 13, you're 16. You know how much you can role model that guy. Help him a little bit. And you get the kids who want to do it, and they're all about it. And then you get the ones who do not want to know about it. And often, a lot of the time, their parents are, you know, also behind that factor too. But I want to kind of build on that point. Is that something you guys look at? Is this kid a giver or a taker? Is he looking to, you know, help his teammates? If he's injured, is he still there? Is he, you know, etc. Scott?
So yeah, I used to have when I was back at Fairleigh Dickinson, I had a mentor named Roger Kendall. He recently passed away, but he left me some great mental nuggets in coaching. And one of the things that one of his nuggets was that there is a disease in athletics, and it is the disease of me. And if you have it, it is incurable. So it cannot be about me. So one of the philosophies that I brought into our program at Drew is when you come to Drew, your job right away is not to win tennis matches. Your job is to help everybody else win tennis matches through environment, through practice attitude, through teamwork, whether it's study skills, whatever it is. Your job is to help everybody else win. Their job is to help you win. And if we're all doing that, we're all growing as people. I think tennis is the easy part. In the fuzzy ball, in between the white lines on the other side, that's the easy part. Growing as a human and being a good teammate, that's what separates us. So yeah, it's not important. It's the only thing. Being a great teammate, it's capital T. That's your job title. Teammate is where it's at.
Damian, yourself at the Ivies and the D1 levels?
I actually learned this from my coach in South Africa. When I was 18 years old, I just got my highest ITF ranking. I got to 30 in the world, and I come out and I was like, this is great. I'm going to hit with the best players, be at the top court, show the parents how good I am. This is awesome. And my coach sends me down to the bottom court with a 13-year-old girl and says, okay, go practice. And I was like, wait, what? He's like, it doesn't matter who you hit with, you can get better. It's like, if you can't get better with hitting with her, you're not going to get better, right? He's like, focusing on not just the other person, but focusing on yourself. You can get footwork. The ball's coming back over. It doesn't matter how hard or soft. Yes, you're going to play with better players, but you also got to learn, like those first 2 rounds, if you're the number 1 seed, those first 2 rounds are less than you. And again, I put in quotes because it's not really a sport, so anything can happen. But you got to learn how to play with those people. You got to learn how to play. If you think somebody's worse than you, you got to be able to, play your best tennis for that and learn how to get better no matter what, because you're not going to be feeling well. We also try to tell our guys to, when we give back, because that's when they learn the most. Because once again, you take that focus off yourself and you put on something else, usually you get better and you start to actually self-correct your own stuff. Like, I promise you, almost every single coach has said, I became a better tennis player when I became a coach. Why is that? Because they're giving it back to somebody else, they're learning, and then they can kind of self-correct with themselves, whether it's a forehand or backhand. And you can start to tell players almost to become mini coaches. And if they can start to do that, first of all, they become less selfish and they become grateful on top of that, for the opportunities, because it's such a great opportunity that they get to play college tennis.
It's absolutely insightful, guys. And just further on that point, before I pass to Ari to pull some questions out of the chat, I'll never forget one time being at a tournament in Shanghai. It was the Masters, the 1000. And I happened to be on court on the opposite end of Roger Federer, who was practicing. One of my players happened to be fortunate enough to practice with him. And it was incredible how insightful Roger was. This player had a very awkward one-handed backhand. And so he was almost shadowing his swing and kind of trying to realize, what can he do? What can't he do with the ball? And at the change of ends, he's asking me questions about this kid. He's so talented. Where is he? He hits so well. And, it was really great to see one of the greatest players of all time, arguably the GOAT, being so humble and giving back feedback to this kid who he'll never see again. Just saying, you should try this and you should try that. And you got a one-hand back and how you should think about. And so it also highlighted to me, those players have the ability to understand corrective techniques, understand the swing, understand a little bit about coaching, because Emma Doyle last Tuesday was talking a lot about, self-coaching and how to coach yourself and how to reflect back in and bring that out to go up against someone else. So those are great points there, Damian. I'm going to throw over to my teammate, Ari. There's been some great questions come in, Ari. Shoot.
Yeah, I'll follow up a couple. Also to follow up on your Federer. Remember, Donald Young was at our club last year for the tournament. His first round opponent canceled. He's not quite on Federer's level, but he ended up hitting with some of our kids, and just a great guy too as well. That gave tips.
That's awesome.
The difference between the mentors and the ones that just are in it for themselves. But yeah, a couple of great questions. I'm going to start with our friend Yev, who works out of Marlboro. He wants to know, when you're recruiting, you look at ITF, USTA, UTR points. Is one more important than the other? Are they same importance? Are they not important? Is the person themselves more important? Or where do you rank that, ITF, USTA, and UTR in your recruiting repertoire?
So my aspect is I'll look at everything. I'm gonna look at all of it. They're all indicators in one way or another. None of them tell the whole story. They may not all match up perfectly depending on which tournaments they haven't played, where in the world they haven't played. So we'll look at all of it. But what is most important to me is this kid a Drew Ranger? That's the most important part to me. Whether I think they're going to bring us a national title or not, we'll figure that out when they get here. But the most important to me is who they are as a person. Obviously, if somebody has a phenomenal, if there's a blue chip recruit that calls me, I'm probably a little bit less worried about whether they fit in or not. But I still want to know. That's the most important thing to me is what kind of person are we dealing with here? And we can talk about the tennis stuff later. That's my look at it, Ari.
Great for because we have a lot of high school and middle school kids listening in, so it's great insight.
Yeah, I think also, what can they do? Some people can travel and play ITF. Some people can't. Some people can just play regional USTA, and others can't. Some people can just play UTR tournaments. So I think it's also that's why Scott alluded to a great point that we take all of it into account. And again, it's one kind of metric. It gives us an idea. We don't just put a number and we say, this is your number. We say, okay, now we have an idea. Now let's look at the other stuff. And then we start to obviously look at it, depending on the school, start to look at academics, attitude, those kind of things on top of that. So I think it just, we look at all of it. Again, we shouldn't be just looking at ITFs because it could be 30 ITF and the OTR could be terrible, whatever. So we kind of take all of it into account when doing that.
Great info. Okay, that answers Barbara Almeida. You're on the call too, but she wanted to know what are some things that look for in a student athlete. So I think you pretty much covered that right there, which is awesome. Frank DeLucia, one of the members of our club, has two kids, both unbelievable tennis players. Isabella is in our academy. Frank is asking, when you're considering a player, does higher education method matter? Homeschooling versus public schooling. We obviously have homeschool kids that are in our academy.
For me, it doesn't matter because you can get an introvert from a public school, you can get an extrovert from homeschool, you can get a very unique personality from a boarding school. Different kind of folks come from all different kind of backgrounds. So to me, it doesn't matter. But content of character really matters. I don't want selfish. I don't want arrogant. I want learners. I want hard workers. I want givers, and that can come from anywhere. And I would say that it might be a little bit short-sighted of a coach to say, I don't want people from this type of school, because the type of school you attend does not make you a type of player, I don't think. And then as far as how they're taught or coached, if they know how to use the tools that they've been coached, I think they're doing okay. If they don't know how to use that tools, we might have to tweak it a little bit. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I think in terms of homeschooling, if you're going to higher education, I think it's talking to the coach and talking to getting through what admissions is looking for in terms of that. So I think that could play a factor into it. With us, we have a couple of guys at homeschooling, but they did really well academically, did well in the SAT, ACT. So we look at that too. We take kind of the whole picture into that, especially when you go into higher education, Division 3, high level educations at Division 1. So we look at that. But I mean, a public school in Alabama compared to a public school in New Jersey is going to be very different. Public school, when you're in New Jersey, is a very, very high level, and public school. So if you're trying to get into a high level education school, that's a conversation that you have with the coach. What do I need to do? Again, that's going to be one part of the metric in terms of, okay, do I fit as a player? Do you like me? Do I have the kind of grade? It all kind of plays in. It's not like, oh, I hit the scores. I got this. I'm a 4.0. I have an amazing SAT. I should be going to your school. No, not at all. It's, okay, you have it? Okay, now that's step one. Again, like I talked, step 1 out of step 10. That's the first step. And you start to look at all these different schools. I did homeschooling and public school. I did a little bit of both. And I wanted to travel to play ITFs because of homeschooling. And so you start to, I think you have communication with the coach and say, if I do homeschooling, can I go to your school? Is it possible? if I'm considered and going to go into the program, what do I need to do if I need to do that? Again, from academic side, then it's what do I need to do as player? What kind of skills? And then it's the things that we start to look at. Is this person going to fit well in the team? Are they going to do well on our team? Because again, we could have the best player. They could have a perfect SAT score. They could be a 4.0, number one in the country. And we go, yeah, I mean, it would be really hard, but we might say, this won't be the place for you. Or this is going to be the perfect place for you. So I think that all depends on that.
So, Ari, if I can jump in there, I've been fortunate to run full-time academies over the last 20 odd years around the world, and I've had probably every level of player, from homeschooled young to go to private school, then come out and do homeschool correspondence, or kids that have gone to public schools and then gone homeschool and then gone to college. My point is, there's no one pathway. I'm absolutely clear about that. I've had
100%.
kids who, very young, they were homeschooled, and that was the concern, is will they ever be able to get to college? And my point was, don't worry about that until they're 15 years old. Let's get all the tools in place. Some of those kids, one of those girls right now is at Texas A&M and absolutely ripping it. She was homeschooled, the whole way. So I understand that it is a concern for some parents, but I do feel like often this conversation comes up too early. And there are a lot of kids, speaking from the private academy side, there are a lot of kids who don't do homeschool, even though they have the potential to become very good tennis players and go on to do, let's say, D1 or high D3 tennis level academics, and they choose not to. And some of them don't achieve that ability that they probably could have had they got that volume in at a younger age group during that window. I call it, between 12 and 15 years old. There's a window of development there physically that we should try to take advantage of. And so, I think that my message would be that from what I've seen, there's absolutely multiple pathways to success.
Probably more in our sport than just about any other. I mean, if you look, let's say you're looking at basketball, you're an American basketball player, you've got to play for your high school team and you've got to play AAU, and there's very little other ways to go about it, and go on whatever sport you want. But in our sport, my goodness, I mean, look at Damian's roster and Billy's down there at Princeton, look at mine and Drew, you're going to see among those two, you're going to see 40 different people from 40 different backgrounds and 40 different, paths. So, I think it's a good point, Conrad.
Yeah. Ari, can I ask one question that's come in from one of our full-timers? She's in Russia. So
let me go to Andrew first, and then you can finish with Sophia.
Right, go ahead.
Andrew, which is interesting. Andrew Zabello is one of the top players at Newark Academy. He has a specific question about, I'm going to broaden it though. It looks like he wants to study engineering and heard that at some of the schools there are conflicts with classes and practices. What are solutions there? Is that true? What happens if that's the case for any kids with their their studies and practice?
Yeah, can I go ahead and
go ahead.
I'm reading the question right now. It doesn't matter. It's going to depend on the person. Again, some people might be in over their heads, but on our team, we have 3 guys on our team that are engineers. And in two of our guys, financial engineering, that it's one of the hardest majors at Princeton, and one of them plays number 2 for us on our team. So playing them, and we're top 25 in the country. So I think that just answers the question for itself. It's possible. Again, don't be dumb. Like me, I'm not going to go to engineering. I'm like, I'm going to be in over my head. And you can start to see that pretty early. I think kids start to figure out in the first 2 years what they want to study, and really, really broaden. Don't come in and just say, oh, I'm going to be this. Yeah, you can have an idea what you like, but really just say, okay, what's out there? What's out there? What can I do? And start to figure out what you're good at. Because you might say, oh, I want to do engineering, and you are not very good at engineering. And that could take a big toll on your tennis, actually. Because if you start putting too much time into that, because you are a student athlete, not just a student, not just an athlete. So if you start putting too much time into the student, then obviously the athlete's going to start falling away, and vice versa when you're doing that. So I think understanding you as a person, and can you do that? Can you handle it if you want to do that?
Cool.
Ari, the Sophie question I wanted to ask, she's one of our full-time players, ITF player, very good player. She's basically asked more of a tennis-related question. So at this time during quarantine, how, you might have some players that are on a run, they were really confident, getting deep into the season, doing really well. What can they do? What are you encouraging those players to do right now going to lockdown, or what's your take on kind of that confidence thing at this point?
They've experienced a loss. It's a loss of season, but it's a loss. So it's okay for that player to mourn and grieve a little bit. It's not a loss of a life, which, unfortunately some people have also dealt with that. But they lost something that they were working hard for. So it's okay for some of them to need time away from the game. Even some of them need that. But what's most important here is their own mental health. If they want to get back on the court, and I think the vast majority do, they've got to find a way to get back to being mentally healthy, mentally prepared, and mentally ready. So do what's best for them. A little bit of time off might be okay. It might be warranted. It's okay to be upset. One of my players on my women's team asked me if she was crying, and is that okay? I said, absolutely. If that's going to help you process what you lost, that's okay. But get back to being you however you can, I guess, would be my advice.
Right, Tib. Damian?
Yeah, is it question based on the schedule and the quarantine? Can I elaborate more on that?
Go for it.
Yeah. So I think it's just setting goals. I think understanding. I think it is tough. I think what Scott was saying, it is really tough in understanding. I mean, it was really tough for us even as coaches, and just not being able to finish the season. And I can't imagine for players and just getting it taken away from you. So that's really tough. And I think from there, once you get past that, it's like once you start to fit a perfect schedule, you got to find out what are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? Because you can't just, I'm just going to do something. Just go and do it. It's like, no, what are your goals? What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? How can you come out of this better than you were before? Setting goals, I think, is going to be perfect. And that's going to go into setting a perfect schedule. My goal is to really crush academics. When I get that, the SAT comes back and I really want to be good at the SAT, I'm probably going to put more work into studying for the SAT. So I'm going to put that as my goal. Maybe put an extra hour doing that. If it's fitness, maybe it's like, I really wasn't that quick. I want to get a little bit fitter and stronger. Coming up, okay, so fitter and stronger. How can I come up with, maybe talk to Conrad and talk to other people. How can I come up with a fitness schedule that's going to fit me? I don't have any equipment. Okay, great. This is what we can do. I have bands. Great. This is what we can do. Start to do that. I do think trying to keep it as close to what normal is as possible. Setting out, hey, I used to go to school at this time. This is the time I'm going to study. Then I'm going to do tennis. If you can start to keep it a little bit close to that, that can really help. If you finish your studying in 3-4 hours, great. You get a little bit extra for fitness or tennis. Maybe work on nutrition. That's another great way. You can start to do things. You can really become really good at a lot of things and really focus on that with this time instead of wasting it.
Great point. Ari, did you have any other questions?
That is all the questions from the gallery, all great questions. Nothing else from myself. I did want to go over the schedule for the 360 guests, but I can do that once you wrap everything up. And me personally, I want to thank Damian and Scott for coming on. It's a huge benefit for our students, for everybody that's listening in, and of course for just and doing what they do for the college athletes.
Well, thanks for having us. This is the best part of the day when we get to talk. This is what we miss. So thanks for having us, for sure.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Hopefully that information helped and people got some good answers from it, especially just during this time period.
And guys, just to back that up, we really appreciate it. Obviously, Centercourt here in Jersey, we're close to you guys, and you guys have always put your hand up to help us out at every time, and we appreciate that unbelievably. I can't stress that enough on behalf of myself and Clay and the rest of the Centercourt Tennis Academy crew. This has been absolutely incredible information. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more questions that come out of it. And if there are, I would just like to, at this point, let everyone know, of course, we have our incredible 360 Centercourt concept, which is all about developing the student athlete and helping those athletes become better students. We kind of put a flip on it the other way, and we want to help everyone get better at the whole college pathway process. The schedule is really, really deep in terms of what's available. There's tutoring available as well. We have some, very high-end private tutors that are available, and the schedule is there each week. So Ari might let you know more about that. The last thing I wanted to let everyone know about is we're launching next Monday our Centercourt online tennis academy. It's absolutely cool thing. It's a 21-day program. There's 2 days free of charge. And then if you're interested to sign up, you can sign up from there. It's very cheap and it's awesome. I mean, I've done it. I've done the first 2 days. There's 3 levels. We've got a rogie level. We've got a what we call a development level, and we've got a performance level. So I've done all 3 and I'm really, really impressed with it. We've done it in conjunction with our partners in Spain, the Soto Tennis Academy. So keep your eyes open for all of that information. And without any further ado, thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. Ari, always fun.
Great time. Thanks again.
Thanks, Conrad. Thanks, Ari.
Thanks,
You're
guys.
very welcome, guys. I threw the 360 schedule in the chat, and that's it. We are out. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Damian. Good talking to you.